Mr. Augusto Perez has been a friend and a guest of our show for a number of years now, but he is one of my favorite guests. He has a tremendous ministry, and I would say one of the unsung heroes of explaining and sharing what the Lord has ordained him and given him and blessed him with for the purpose of sharing it with other people. He's written so many books. And Augusto, could you get into your ministry and what it is, the fivefold ministry, if I'm correct, and how that differs from normal churches and
Sure.
how your congregation does?
Thank you, Joe and Doug, for having me tonight. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and I'm glad to be able to be with you tonight. And listeners, maybe there are some listeners that have never heard me on the show before. I was born in Cuba. I came here with my parents when I was 12 years old. I went through the revolution there in Cuba, so I have a first-hand knowledge on what happened and transpired there. And I started as a pastor. I was born again. I was saved in Miami, Florida. I started as a pastor for 7 years. The Lord called me out of that, which I call an Abrahamic call, which is a call of, a call of faith. I had to leave that and leave Miami and go where He showed me. He mentioned to me in a very long experience I had at night that He was going to prepare me for a ministry an end-time ministry that was going to be used by Him. And I was not the only one. He said, there are others, but you're going to be one of those that I'm going to use to prepare my people, my bride. And He said, I'm going to use you to prepare my bride because my church is very decadent. It is powerless, and it is not prepared. It's not ready for what is coming. It's not ready for my return. And so basically He gave me kind of a bridegroom type of ministry, end-time ministry to prepare His bride and so forth. So I spent the next several years, I would say the next decade or maybe 12 years, in preparation in the wilderness, learning to hear the voice of God. He had to cleanse me of all the leaven that I had learned in the nominal church system. And I basically had to throw all that out. And not all of it was bad. A lot of it was good. And I thank God for the good. But a lot of it was man's traditions, man's rituals. And so he kind of had to get, rid me of that. He had to kind of like wipe my hard drive. And then He began to download, new, fresh revelation from the Word, things that didn't make sense to me, that it never bore witness to my spirit. All those things had to be cleansed out of my system, man's leaven, traditions, rituals, and so forth. And that, that took time. And that took time where I had to become humble and pliable in His hands. And in order to be able to be used for this end-time ministry, he taught me to hear His voice. He started giving me dreams and visions, but they really started to escalate back in the year 2000. That's when I began to have several of dreams and visions a year. And it has been escalating. It has been intensifying as we get closer to the end of all things, where it hits the fan. The Lord has shown me many things prophetically, through dreams, visions, through audible voice, about the end times. He's shown me the civil war that is coming in the U.S. He's shown me the riots, the burning, the looting. He's shown me martial law. He's shown me great hunger, great bloodshed that is coming on the land. He's shown me cataclysmic events that are also coming on the whole world. He showed me many of these things in different times and different seasons in different ways. Right now we are in a time of harvest. Last year the Lord basically told me, begin to bring in the harvest. I have been a watchman on the wall for many years, for at least a decade, but I have been doing this since the early 90s, watchman, warning the people, preparing the people for all these things. Last year, the Spirit of the Lord spoke to me at the beginning of the year and told me, okay, that phase of warning is kind of fading. You're still going to warn some, but there are others now warning. So I want you to focus on bringing in the harvest, because this is now a top shelf, top priority in the kingdom of heaven, because the people are not ready. There's a lot of people out there that are not ready. They're not safe. They're not prepared. And so there's a lot of people that are going to die, Doug and Joe. They're going to die. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people are going to perish in many of these things that are going to happen. And so if they die without the Lord, they are not going to make it. They're not going to go to a very pleasant place. The Bible calls it hell. So I believe in hell. I do believe there is a literal hell. I believe there's a literal heaven. And so, right now we are emphasizing salvation, reaching out, bringing in the harvest, and still warning the people, of course. But there is a strong emphasis in heaven right now on bringing in the harvest. Jesus Christ, when he was asked by his disciples, what will be the signs of your coming? If you notice what the Lord said, he made a few things, but you have to read between the lines. And many of these things that he said, and in prophecy in the Bible, you sometimes have to ask the Lord for discernment, for him to show you these things, what is written there between the lines. One of the first things that the Messiah said was, there will be signs in the sun. Now, how many of you have been seeing solar flares of a category never seen before? X-class solar flares, sometimes 2 of them in a week. We have never seen anything like that. So the Lord said there will be signs in the sun. There would be signs in the moon and in the stars. And at the same time, while this is going on, there was going to be distress, perplexity in the world. In my lifetime, I don't remember a time that has been more turbulent than what we are now. It's just seems like wars are just all over the place. There's always people fighting somewhere. I have never seen any time in history when there have been so many earthquakes of such a high level in the Richter scale. We're not talking about 3s and 4s and 5. We're talking about 6 and 7s and 8s. They're happening at a frequency never seen before. And I mean, volcanoes. Look how many volcanoes are erupting right now. Tonight, even as I'm talking, there are over 40 volcanoes erupting in the whole world right now, and 34 of them are on the ring of fire. Looking back, when was there a time when this was happening? I don't remember. I don't think there ever was like that, at least not since the coming of the Lord. And so this is exactly what the Messiah was talking about, that there was going to come a time that was going to signal. Okay, there were going to be signs pointing to his return. And many of these things were going to be volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, seasonal waves roaring, that's tsunamis, ethnic group fighting against ethnic group. That's what's going on in the Middle East. That's what's going on in Russia. That's what's going on in Ukraine. All these areas, that is exactly what we're seeing. We are seeing it here in the States even. So the Lord prophesied that these were going to be things that were going to happen. And then he also said that the powers of the heavens were going to be shaken. Okay, now that event is beginning to happen. It hasn't happened yet. Okay, we're getting there fast. And he said the powers of the heavens were going to be shaken. And then he said, when that happens, he says, you will see the sign of the Son of Man appear in heaven. Now, I had a brother named Doug Ewell here on. I interviewed him on the program one time, and he wrote a book out, and it's titled Planet X: The Sign of the Son of Man. And I read that book. I have not had a chance to read it completely from cover to cover, but I read a lot of it. And he makes some very convincing statements and presents evidence as to why he believes that is so. Now, it is up to each individual to, believe it or reject it, and that's fine. I'm just bringing it up for the sake of argument that, he calls it, that's the sign of the Son of Man, okay? And so when I read that, or when I heard that, it rang in my spirit as truth. And the more I read, the more I began to realize, you know what, this definitely makes sense. Nobody has ever been able to explain that statement made by the Lord Jesus Christ, Yeshua, that the sign of the Son of Man would appear in the heavens. Now, they call this planet X the planet of the crossing because it looks like a cross when you look at it from far. And the scientists have been talking about this since the 80s. Scientists have known about the existence of this object, okay? But they quickly dismissed scriptural reference of such a past occurrence or future prophetic fulfillment. So there are two camps in this thing, is the scientific camp, and then there's the religious camp who disregard scientific evidence about such a planet, okay, and prophetic events. So there are two camps. Well, I'm in the middle. I personally believe that the best way to look at this thing includes both science as well as history and prophetic events contained in the Bible. According to people that have studied this, celestial object, that it comes around every 3,600 years, plus or minus. Some other people believe different, and I happen to believe that is probably the correct figure, because it kind of falls right in. I mean, it just comes into perfect alignment with the last time he came by, which I personally believe it was during the Exodus. Many of the events in the Exodus are, basically are duplicated in the book of Revelation. I mean, the 10 plagues, the water turning to blood, the sores appearing on the cattle. I mean, on and on. The darkness that falls. All of these things happened in the Exodus. It also talks about it in the book of Revelation, the very same plagues. So these same plagues, I don't believe are a coincidence. I believe that there is something that is bringing about these same things, that triggers these same events. Why are so many countries in the world obsessed about doing the same things? Building underground bunkers, storing food, arming the military, for an event. What is going on, you see? So this is when you have to take a step back and you have to, pray about it and ask God for discernment, because there's something more here, like Doug was saying at the beginning of the program. There's something more going on here than really we understand. The potential of this object for causing worldwide geological catastrophes, okay, is very real. It's very, very, very real. This object is about, from what the Lord has shown me, is about 5 times the size of the earth. Some say it's 7 times the size of the earth. Some say it's much more. The Lord, from what I have received from the Lord, is 5 times the size of the earth. This event will bring a fulfillment, a prophetic fulfillment of numerous scriptures that warn about a time of trouble coming upon the whole world, which will be greater than any time in history. I gave you the scriptures in that first hour. I have friends that know scientists that work with NASA, and some of them are retired, some of them are still active. I have interviewed some of them. They are predicting the same things. All of these men and their scientific minds, they're not, scriptural people like me, prophetic people like me. They are scientific. They basically are saying the same thing. They're predicting the same events that is going to be caused by an approaching heavenly object. I mean, the earthquakes happen. I mean, look at Nepal.
Oh, yeah.
He had like 3 earthquakes in a week, and it just had another one. Over 8,000 people dead. I mean, this is really ramping up. As these things begin to intensify and the time and the date approaches when it's going to hit the fan, there's going to be food shortages. The climate is going to go crazy. There's going to be droughts. Look at California. There's going to be floods. There's going to be fires, tornadoes. All these things happening at the same time in different parts of the country and the world is going to begin to decimate the bread baskets of the world, the food-producing nations and food-producing regions. there will be a lack also of conventional distribution from the subsequent destruction of the bridges, the railroads, the power grids. Then there's going to be epidemics as a result of, many of these things, animals dying, massive animal kills, sea life, birds, cattle, and even people, and there's going to be, along with these epidemics, food shortages, lack of access to medical care, transportation failures, economic collapse, martial law, from all the aforementioned escalating events. So from these things, it seems clear why we have been seeing in the last several years, especially during the Clinton, Bush, we started seeing these things during the Clinton administration. They began to ramp up during the Bush administration, and they really went through the roof through the Obama administration. Basically, the executive orders pertaining to future scenarios of nationwide disasters, as well as government buying all available ammunition, arming local police with automatic assault rifles, armored vehicles. The U.S. is preparing for a national or worldwide catastrophe that will result in martial law. So this is exactly, again, what the Lord prophesied. He said there's going to be an intensification in number and intensity of earthquakes. And it's going to be accompanied by many of these other things. Remember, it was not just earthquakes, because people will say, the people that drink from the waters of the Nile River, they're in the Nile, they will always say, nah, it's always happened. We've always had earthquakes, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we've always had earthquakes, but not this frequent, not this intense. And each year it's just going, more and more and more earthquakes, more volcanic eruptions, more of all these things happening. This is what the Messiah was talking about.